would be honored if you would join us.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Film Stories. I'm Dan Cooper and today we are looking at Star Beast. No? Never heard of Star Beast? Okay, you may know it by its eventual name, which is, of course, Alien. So cast your minds back to the late 70s. Science fiction in Hollywood is very hot property due to the runaway success of Star Wars: A New Hope. And 20th Century Fox in particular were riding high on that success of Star Wars. After all, they were the studio to give George Lucas a chance. They were the only studio in town to give George Lucas a chance. And the Alan Ladd Jr., who was the head of Fox's film division, was the guy who greenlit Star Wars and the guy that stuck with Lucas through thick and thin when others didn't, and because of Star Wars' then unprecedented and completely unexpected success, he was seen as the exec in town who then had the magic touch, the ability to pick those scripts that could turn over huge amounts of money. So science fiction was the hot ticket then, and everyone in Hollywood was looking for the next Star Wars. And it so happened that sitting next on Ladd's desk was the Alien script. Now, the script for Alien started out as a script written by a writer named Dan O'Bannon. O'Bannon had been at the USC Film School alongside John Carpenter, and together they worked on a film together. It began life as a student film. It was named Dark Star, and it began life as a student film, which the ambition of it grew, and instead of becoming, I think this is O'Bannon's words, instead of becoming a huge student film, it actually became a very small independent film. It was a science fiction comedy, and whilst they were working on Dark Star, O'Bannon had the idea that the comedy wasn't really working, and he started the idea germinated that he wanted to switch the story around and use some of the elements, but retool it, if you like, as a space horror instead. But he didn't get too far because he was summoned on by Lucas. We've of course gone back in time now, before Star Wars, by a couple of years, to work on some of the computer screens that were used in A New Hope. And then he was called upon by Alejandro Jodorowsky, who got him to move to Paris and begin planning effects on his adaptation of Dune, which was a kind of doomed adaptation. But so at this point, O'Bannon was tooling around with special effects. He was also writing. Anyway, enter now Ron Shusett. Now, Ron Shusett at this point was a kind of self-styled producer, and Shusett had the rights to a Philip K. Dick text. We can remember it for you wholesale. And Shusett was interested in bringing O'Bannon on board to get that project moving. But before that happened, O'Bannon showed Shusett his half-completed Alien script instead. And when they looked at them both, they decided to team up and work on the script named Star Beast, as it was named at the time, because they thought that seemed like a cheaper to make project and therefore was a more doable. They agreed that together they can maybe look to get it made as a B movie in the Roger Corman stable. So Shusett eventually, as the project began to kind of go into the writing stage, Shusett paired up with another two producers, Walter Hill and David Gieler, who they had the nous to be able to get the film into Fox. But as they took the script, O'Bannon's script, and they began to rewrite it. And O'Bannon, there's a really good documentary on YouTube that you can watch about the making of Alien, where O'Bannon gives an anecdote about when he walks into the office of the executive Gordon Carroll, and he sees his Alien script, but the story by credit is no longer his, or the screenplay credit is no longer his. It actually is named to the two new producers, Walter Hill and David Gieler. Things became kind of, in the aftermath, things became really quite acrimonious. And this is the film story that realised at the heart of this episode today, because with Alien, of course, there's lots of things we can focus on. It could be Scott's experience as the director, the legacy of the series, but the thing that really interests me, having looked at it, is the approach to the script and the different additions that each producer made, and where the screenplay and credit eventually fell. So Shusett has admitted that Hill and Gila added the whole synthetic angle. So that I won't say which character, in case you've never seen the 1979 film. So statute of limitations for spoilers is probably out, but there's a synthetic character, and they added that idea. They also, the duo Gila and Hill, also claim that they rewrote all the dialogue, characters, character names, and they argue that they added the truck driver in space angle, I suppose you'd call it. Up until that point, they claimed that the characters in the script were largely comprised of more astronauts, but they gave it that kind of grimy, lived-in, smoky truckers in space element that kind of did give the Nostromo that lived-in feel that I suppose was popular post Star Wars. O'Bannon, however, claims that much of this isn't true, and that they really just kind of changed the names of the characters in the hope that that would count as substantial rewrites to get them a credit. The recriminations go on when the script finally did get greenlit. Gila and Hill claimed that O'Bannon was only allowed on set during filming because of his contract and added nothing of value to the production. But in turn, O'Bannon claims that he should have had more credit than he actually got, because he was involved with the art direction for the film, at least in the at the outset, something which is confirmed by other members of the production team. He did lead the initial pre-production art design and was instrumental in bringing H.R. Geiger on board to give the Xenomorph that iconic design. But in the end, O'Bannon got the screenplay credit. There was obviously, of course, there were arguments between who had contributed what, but the story credit was his, as the original idea was his, but he also took the screenplay credit, and that was that. Like Blade Runner, moving on briefly onto the production, really, but like in Blade Runner, a film which we've covered before here on the YouTube channel, Scott was brought in to direct, but he kind of very much ran it in the same way as Blade Runner, where he was focused on the aesthetic, he was focused on the look, and he didn't really direct the cast. They've spoken about in interviews. He did obviously use the story and went with the story to kind of push forward gender representation, and the character of Ripley is archetypal of horror's final girl mold, much like Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode in Halloween, which came out the year before, actually. But unlike Laurie Strode and most of the surviving final girls, Ridley Scott's always been keen to point out that the character of Ripley, didn't merely survive; she won, and he believes that's a small but important distinction, because and that the fact that the female character is a victor at the end of the film, is relevant in moving forward that idea of gender representation. And the counterpoint to that, of course, would be that perhaps he wouldn't do some of that progression with his very next film, Blade Runner. But that's an issue maybe we can look forward to getting back into in a future episode. There was tension on set, not just between the producers and O'Bannon. There's a great deleted scene. There's lots of great deleted scenes actually in the 2003 director's cut, where Veronica Cartwright Lambert hits Sigourney Weaver, and the beef between them then was real. It dated all the way back to Cartwright's claims that when she turned up to day one of the shoot, she had tested for and believed and was told that she was playing the part of Ellen Ripley. So when she showed up on the first day and was told that she was playing a much smaller part, and then she also claims that her part, that Lambert's part, then was cut further down in the edit, you could see her frustrations, and they do seem to be evident in that scene. The film, of course, eventually, despite all the tensions, would go on to be a huge success. From an $11 million budget, it made over $200 million worldwide, and the movie would go on to spawn several sequels, with Scott himself returning for 2012's prequel Prometheus, and then 2017's rather underrated Alien Covenant, which is a film that I quite like, even if it does feel a bit like listening to a band kind of past their best, riff their classic material and riff on their classic material to recapture their glory days. But when the band is comprised of Ridley Scott and a raging Xenomorph, take my money. Their back catalogue is that good. I did really rather like it. Shusett would go on to work with O'Bannon again, and they'd get that Philip K. Dick project made. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale would, of course, become Total Recall and would be another sizable success for the duo. But that, my friends, is another film story. Please, before you go, do go. Our magazine is out. Issue 1 of Film Stories is out. You can subscribe. You can go check it out at the website, www.filmstories.co.uk. And from there's links to subscribe to the magazine. You can find us on Facebook at Film Stories Online. You can see us at Twitter at filmstories.pod. And you can also download Simon's terrific podcast on iTunes. That's been Film Stories for this week. We'll see you soon with another film story. Bye-bye.